I will now call to order the Wytheville Town Council meeting Monday, November 25th, 2024 at 5 p.m. being held at the Municipal Building at 150 East Monroe Street, Wytheville, Virginia. We do have a quorum. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Councilman Gilman.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next is approval of the agenda. I'll need a motion.
So moved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and second. Is there any discussion? All right, hearing none, this will be a roll call vote. We'll start with Councilman Gilman.
Gilman, aye.
Patterson, aye.
Taylor, aye.
Atkins, aye. Johnson, aye.
At 6 p.m., we have a recess if necessary. Next is the consent agenda, which consists of the minutes of the regular meeting of November 12, 2024. This requires a motion.
So moved.
I have a motion to accept the minutes of the regular meeting. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and second. Is there any discussion? I hear none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye as well. Any opposed? Ayes have it. All right, so next on the agenda, we're going to consider a resolution granting temporary signatory authority for the town legal documents to the mayor and the assistant town manager. And we have a report by assistant town manager Elaine. If anything needs to be said.
Good evening. So the first item on your agenda this evening is to consider giving signatory authority for myself and the mayor. Obviously, Attorney Castle is also here to answer any questions that you may have about that. We know that the council will be having some discussions about your next steps and the hiring process that you will be going into. However, in the interim, there will be a need to sign things from time to time to keep operations going for the town. So that's essentially what we're asking for this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So now I have consideration by the town council to approve a resolution granting temporary signatory authority for the town legal documents to the mayor and to the assistant town manager. I need a motion.
So moved.
A motion, do we have a second? Second. Motion and second. Is there any discussion?
Ms. Holton, when will this revert back to just the other signatures or Mr. Castle? Would it be like after someone is hired?
So essentially, my understanding would be that if it is approved this evening, it would take place tonight. And essentially, when items come before myself for signature, I will execute that. Everybody here knows that we do have some committee meetings tomorrow, so we'll be talking about some personnel items. Obviously, you are also having some conversations about naming your interim, so that might also factor into the conversation. At this point, I probably would not sign anything personnel related in terms of new hiring or pay adjustments or anything like that without consulting with the committees. But sometimes there's things like requisitions to advertise a job position, and we can talk about some of those things tomorrow in committees.
I'm sorry, I should have made myself clear. When would the two names revert back to, like, when would the mayor come off? When we hired a new town manager?
Yes, when you could include in your resolution that the signatory authority will end at the time of the hiring of, or at the appointment of an interim town manager or hiring of a permanent town manager, either or.
Okay.
That's what I would suggest you consider doing.
All right.
Under the state code, If you don't do that, it reverts to the mayor under that state code that Ms. Corvin sent to you. So
Right.
I think you saw that. So, but what this does is it allows staff to act until you get an interim in place or a
Okay.
permanent town
Sweet.
manager.
Thank you. Sorry, I should have made
Sure.
myself clear.
So we have Ms. Atkins, you'd want to do this, but we have a motion with the inclusion of,
That the resolution would expire. The resolution would expire upon the appointment of an interim town attorney or an acting. And that's in the whereas clause. It's in the whereas clause
Okay.
of your resolution.
Thank you. No, that's fine. Thank you.
Well, could it possibly be that if there is something that is, I guess, of major concern, could we all not be included as a council to see and know what is going on?
Absolutely.
Okay. That's what I would like, just to know what is going
But, I
on, since
mean,
we don't
but-
have an interim.
As you said, if it's something that's outside the ordinary.
That
Are
or
you talking about every single
major,
thing
any
that-
kind of major, I guess, major contracts or anything out of the
Yeah.
out of the ordinary, I would like to be informed, and I'd like to know what's going on. Since we do not have a town manager and we have not appointed an interim yet.
Okay, any other questions, concerns, discussion?
No, ma'am.
All right, so we had a motion and a second. There's no further discussion. Be a roll call vote. Councilwoman Johnson,
Johnson, I.
Atkins, aye.
Taylor, aye.
Patterson, aye.
Gilman, aye.
Passes. Next is the discussion regarding a splash pad feasibility study and a recommendation from the town staff regarding the feasibility study. Assistant Town Manager Lane will increase knowledge on this.
Hello. Okay, so as you recall from the last town council meeting, this was an item that we placed on this agenda. And since then, the Splash Pad Committee met on November the 20th, and we do have representatives from that committee here tonight. Thank you for attending. Essentially, the problem that we were trying to solve was the path for consultant procurement. And in partnership with the committee, what we determined was that if council agrees this evening, we would essentially use the town as a pass-through for the funds that Salt and Light has raised for the feasibility study. So in your packets and on the agenda, you will notice that if you agree, you have 3 different motions that you would consider tonight for this item. The first would be to consider a motion to direct town staff to engage in a task order contract negotiation with Hurt and Profit for the proposed feasibility study and environmental assessment, which staff is very happy to help with that. Motion 2 would be for you to authorize the town treasurer to establish a revenue line item to receive the $25,000 from Salt and Light for the purpose of the feasibility study. And then the third motion would be for town council to consider a motion to authorize the town treasurer to establish an expenditure line item in your current fiscal year budget in the amount of $25,000, which we would use to pay for the consultant to do the feasibility study. If you have any questions, I can answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Anybody have any questions for? Hearing none, the first consideration is to consider by the town council to authorize town staff to have negotiations with Hurt and Profit regarding the splash pad feasibility study and an environmental assessment. I need a motion.
So moved.
I have a motion. I need a second.
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Right, here and none. This is a roll call vote, and we'll start with Councilman Gilman.
Gilman, aye.
Patterson, aye.
Taylor, aye.
Atkins, aye.
Johnson, I.
Next on the agenda is consideration by the town council to authorize the town treasurer to establish a fiscal year 2024-25 budget revenue line item to receive $25,000 from Salt and Light Incorporated for the feasibility study. Once again, I need a motion. Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All right, hearing none. Again, this will be a roll call vote. We'll start with Councilwoman Johnson.
Johnson, aye.
Atkins, aye.
Taylor, aye.
Patterson, aye.
Gilman, aye.
Already has that. Next on the agenda is consideration by the town council to authorize the town treasurer to establish a fiscal year 2024-25 budget expenditure line item in the amount of $25,000 for the splash pad project. I need a motion.
So moved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Right, here none. Be a roll call vote. Mr. Gilman.
Gilman, aye.
Patterson, aye.
Taylor, aye.
Atkins, aye.
Johnson, aye.
Very much. Next on the agenda is consideration by town council to approve the New River Regional Water Authority to represent the town of Wytheville as their Department of Environmental Quality. Wytheville has their Department of Environmental Quality, DEQ, Regional Planning Area Representative in accordance with the local and regional water supply planning regulations. And we will hear from Engineer Andrew Austin.
Hi, how are y'all? Doing well. Basically, we got notice from the DEQ that we needed to have a representative for our water supply to represent our needs in the future to the state for the water supply planning. Originally, we were going to go with the New River Water Authority as a whole. At the meeting last Thursday, they decided that each locality would represent themselves. So tonight,
Excuse me, we can't hear you very well.
oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you, sir.
Is that better?
A little bit.
Okay. The State Department of Environmental Quality has asked the localities that have water supplies within them to have two representatives. One is the sole representative or the primary representative, and one is the secondary. Originally, the New River Water Authority was wanting to represent all partner localities together. And at last board meeting, they decided that that was not the route they wanted to take. So Wytheville will need to name a representative and an alternate. And this is basically to show what we need in the future as far as water needs within the town so that we can develop a plan going forward as a state. So tonight, what I was asked for the town to do, or the council to do, is to appoint myself and Robbie Croonage as an alternate for the for these representative positions. Does that work? Good.
Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, so at the November 25th Town Council meeting, I am requesting a motion as follows: to appoint Andrew Austin, Assistant Director of Public Utilities and Engineering as a Regional Planning Area RPU representative for the town of Wytheville, and Robbie Kunick, Superintendent of the town of Wytheville Water Plant, as his alternate. Motion.
So moved.
Motion, do we have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, this will be a roll call vote. We'll start with Councilwoman Johnson.
Johnson, aye.
Atkins, aye.
Taylor, aye.
Patterson, aye.
Gilman, aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Next is discussion regarding ground field options for the area formerly occupied by the Winter Parks bleachers. We can have a staff report from Director of Public Utilities and Engineering, Mr. Billy Anderson.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is basically just a quick report on the status of the stadium site as it is, also where it's potentially going to go and what we need to do until that point comes. With Wytheville Stadium demolished and all the masonry materials removed from the site is poised to be completed. With the former stadium site being designated as the primary location for the proposed Salt and Light splash pad project, how the site is completed prior to the construction of any further facilities will need to be decided. So basically, before we kind of get into anything else as far as construction or anything, we need to decide how the site needs to be addressed as it is. After demolition, currently there is not enough material left on site to grade the site to something resembling a natural ground, nor can we leave the site as it exists until the proposed feasibility study is completed. After discussion with myself and a few other people, the contractor that demolished the properties or the bleachers as well, basically the two options are basically presented before you. Option one, this option will complete the site as cheaply as possible and will result in a stadium site which has been filled with any available material that can be sourced by the town. This material will have no engineered assessed properties or qualities. The material will not be compacted to create a mock natural ground density and will have topsoil, seeding, and mulching applied to regain an adequate vegetation on top of it. So basically, you would end up looking like it'd produce a field like the remaining Wytheville Park is. You'd have a grass area. When you, to give you an example, with this, the fill material we would source from wherever we could, either our own stockpiles or we would accept fill to be placed in the site. Basically, and it would be this material that was just basically used to fill up the gap. It couldn't necessarily be constructed on. If in fact we go this route, and if, as requested, a stadium site maintains its status as the primary location for the proposed splash pad, additional measures may be required prior to the commencement of construction. This will be necessary to ensure that the ground under the facility has the required staple properties needed to adequately support heavy features shown on the splash pad layout. Things like the surge tanks, the buildings, the footers for your dumping buckets and things like that require heavy footers underneath of them. Some of this could include the partial or complete removal of installed materials and may require additional engineering or site amendment. If we don't address the site now and kind of prep it for a potential development like this, we may have to come back and either do engineered amended footers or basically pull the material back out and install a compacted layer that would meet the engineering standards for these features, or basically any construction measure. It could be a building footer or anything. The expenses associated with this portion would include source material either from town stock or for third party source. Possible materials available through branch civil from the construction being performed at Harold Peppers Ferry Road for the interstate project. The town would be responsible for basically securing and sourcing materials and for transportation of that materials from the borrow site to the site here in town at Withers. We do have a quote for the continued rental of the perimeter fence control for at least an additional month to give the contractor time to get this material in and then smooth it out, get it strawed, stabilized, and seeded, to get it to where it would be established or stabilized for wintertime. Litton's Landscape is the same contractor that demoed the site, was the one providing the quotes. Basically, Litton Landscaping would come in and move the delivered material around the site, and then basically get it leveled down to a natural grade, and then apply an adequate layer of topsoil, mulching, seeding to get like stabilization started on it. Again, we would end up with having a site that would just look like a remaining grass field. It would be a carryover from the other side of the walking track. It'll just be grassed over. Total expense with this will be around $5,200 plus any costs associated with sourcing and transporting needed materials. That will be option one. Option two, this will complete the site in preparation for a splash pad or other similar facilities that may be developed on the site. This option will require the installation of a material. It's known as VDOT 21A or crusher run, which has a known engineered assessed quality. VDOT uses it for subbase for roads. It's used for footer foundations, things like that. It has a known proctor. So when compacted, it has a known value that it is quantified and can be used to calculate footer loads with. This installation would eliminate the requirement to perform almost all additional site engineering prior to commencement of construction and produce a site ready to receive any such development. These expenses associated with this option will include continued rental for the perimeter fence, again for another month, which will be $400. The removal and disposal of unsuitable materials remaining in the stadium void. Right now, in the seat of where the stadium was is a mixture of old material. Some of it's dirt, some of it's a lot of topsoil. Those types of materials are not adequate. Basically, it's called undercutting. So we would go and cut down about 12 inches to make a flat, level plane to be able to bring the material up from. Basically, we would undercut all that material away and then dispose of it so that we're not trying to compact over top of a substandard material. You'll see when they build parking lots, what they'll do is they'll go do a compaction on the material, then they'll do what's called a proof roll. Well, if you have substandard material underneath of your compacted material, the ground will actually pump, and then it will sink down and come back up where the elasticity was. So we would end up having that removed in order to try to eliminate any possibility of that. So again, we're looking to remove about 12 inches down. After that's removed, basically the installation of the crusher run, it will be roller compacted lifts of not to exceed 8 inches. So in order to get 21As compact, they're brought up in 8-inch lifts. They basically bring in a loose layer, fill it up, it's about 8 inches, and then they'll go back and do a compaction and compact it down. They'll do that until the whole entire site's brought up. What we'd end up with would be a site that was basically would level out from the retaining wall there that's up against the walk track, and it would be graded down at a slope to meet the concrete there. We wouldn't have a flat level grade all the way across because we have no way to retain it on the downhill side. So the slope would be from the retaining wall that's there at the basic walking track level down to the existing concrete pad. That expense for Litton Landscape to do that would be $5,700, and that's basically the compaction and moving around the material that's on the site. The sourcing and transport of the crush and run from the distributor to the site. This also would be basically carried out by Litton Landscape. They would haul it, secure it, and basically we have a quote per ton, which is basically the cost of the materials as sourced plus the haul bill. Litton's estimating about $20,900 of material, and that's the bill for the material and the hauling. But again, what he's proposing is basically to produce a site that is what we want, and it's the final grade like I described. So if the quantity is actually less tonnage, he's actually only billing for the tonnage. He's not giving a lump sum. He's going to bill for the tonnage brought to the site. So it could be less than what he's just estimating what he thinks now. So the number you see there is just an estimate of what he believes might take to get the site to bring it back up to have this sloped grade on it. This necessarily would not, given this late in the year, and in order to get grass to grow over top some material like that, we'd have to have probably around a few inches of like a clay material, and then have several inches of topsoil on top of that to try to get the soil grade, to basically get the grass to grow on it. But potentially we would look at a site that would stay in a gravel state until the feasibility study is done. And then if it looked like that was still the primary site, then we're kind of ahead of the game. And if not, then it's very easy to remove the needed material down a couple inches off the top of the site and then bring in topsoil at a later date and get it stabilized in the spring when the grass is going to grow a lot better. Total estimated cost is around $34,900 to get the site in this option. And again, this option would be to kind of prepare the site for a potential construction or a potential development on it, not just get grass on it, but to get it kind of ready if this does stay to be a primary site for this project, or if there's another potential project that comes down later in the line.
I have a question. So if we didn't do option 2 and we did another option and the feasibility study came back that it was a good place to place it, then we would have to redo it for the 34.
So yes, so if we did it under the first one and it comes back that yes, feasibility study says that this will be a good place for this. Yes, what we would have to do is the material that's in there now. The way you typically do construction projects is if you're having to bring field material up, you would source a bar of place, source a stockpiled material, have an engineer's assessment done on that material, basically produce a proctor, what the density, the compaction density is, what it needs to be, and if it's capable to support particular loads. Again, we would have costs associated with whatever source we secure. We would have expenses associated with having an engineer proctor done. So we would have some expense. But yeah, so if we go with option 1, do it least expensive, and it comes back to that's a good place for the potential splash pad, then yes, it's possible that we would have to remove either some or all of the material, depending on what the engineer assessed the site. Because they would basically go through and do core samples of the material, and they would develop a proctor on what we brought in. They would say, no, this is not going to be able to carry the load. We'll have to amend the footer styles for the splash pad features, or the footers for the pad underneath of the surge tanks or the building, the bathroom buildings, things like that. Same thing. What we're doing is potentially looking to prevent maybe going through and having the expense of the removal of the material and then bringing the site back up. So
then instead of us doing the 34, you said 34,900.
Yeah,
we could possibly end up doing close to 40,000 if we went with option 1 and then had to go with option 2.
potentially, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Very potentially, yes.
Now, my question is, I know we're talking about fill dirt or fill material. I just want to make sure, would it be safe fill dirt or safe material filling back in instead of having some, not so good?
Option A or option 1?
Any of it.
Yeah, well, option 1, yes. So the fill material we would bring in would be clean fill, which is classified as it's soil material. It's not a DEQ considers clean fill everything from brick, concrete, as long as it doesn't contain rebar, large masonry pieces, as long as it's, broke down a certain size. But we're not considering that. It would be what's I consider clean soil material. So
make sure it's safe. Okay.
Yeah, it would just be dirt, and what it would be spoils from a potential construction project like out here off the interstate or someone else. If anybody's got a project that they're looking to dispose of dirt, they're always happy to get rid of it. But the bad thing is, if a project like that is looking to dispose of dirt, there's usually something wrong with it, because economics dictates that if you have a construction project, you better try to balance your site. Any material that's dug or moved around on site needs to kind of stay on site, else you're expending a lot of money getting rid of it.
I just want to make sure
typically there's usually potentially something it's not adequate for some use that they have on the project.
I just want to make sure it was safe dirt. I know that's a dumb question, but I just want to make sure.
And then option 2, the crusher run is basically like it's certain size rock aggregate with rock dust in it. So It's basically what they would.
Either
Yeah,
way.
yeah.
Okay,
It's
thank
basically what they use for road projects.
I think she has a really good point, and they both do. And I think we need to, the bleachers were coming down even before the splash pad ever came to fruition as far as
exactly.
I'm concerned. And I think council would want, what they're saying is that they would want the safest thing for anybody and everybody out there, because whether or not now it might be for a splash pad, but 6 months ago, when we didn't have any of that dialogue and we had those bleachers going to have to come down, we probably would have said, we need the safest, best thing for whatever's going there and for our citizens. And so,
But both of them would be safe. Like I said, the crusher run option, like I said, more likely the vegetation that we'll get to grow on the site with option A we'll probably have to hydroseed it and really kind of babysit it to get it to really grow to where it's somewhat stabilized. Option 2 probably would be better off left as a basically like a crush and run compacted area. It would look like a gravel parking lot that potentially we could reuse the railing that Public Works built to block off the stadium in the first place, and it's kind of block it off. I mean, you can, again, both of them are safe. This is basically, it'd be a stable pad that just kind of sits there. Other than some kids scratching their knees up on some gravel, potentially, it wouldn't be a grass area. It would be an aggregate area that would sit there through the winter. Barring we have another huge flood and have, the park kind of overflow with water. There's, the site is a gravel lot. We probably have to do some dressing on it every once in a while, but we probably would have to do the same thing with a soil site. We'd have to keep it mulched until the grass started, which again is going to be extremely slow this time of year. So both of them will probably take a little bit of aftercare in rain events and things like that. But both of them would be safe to leave for the duration until this feasibility study is done. I mean, shouldn't have any problem out of either one of them. The only reason why I suggested blocking it off would be to keep people from potentially driving across it, because it would look like a gravel additional overflow parking lot, which we would try to fix up to kind of prevent.
Billy, can you answer the time frame for the feasibility study from start to finish?
I cannot.
Can you answer that?
I couldn't even begin to guess how long the consultant would spec out for that. I'm not sure.
Ms. Holton, you got any idea?
I mean, if I had to guess, probably 3 to 6 months.
I would conservatively probably say, because if they're looking at everything from site suitability, of course they would factor in the site, the topography, what they would even potentially factor in what's brought into the site, because again, it's Withers Park has a lot of topsoil in it. Basically, it's several feet of topsoil. So if any really big construction projects were to come into any part of the park, it would probably require a lot of undercutting to get rid of the topsoil and bring in appropriate fill material to make a stable base for whatever they're building. So again, it's probably not unreasonable to think that that's an adequate time frame.
Well, the big question is the feasibility study going to approve such a thing to happen, like a splash pad? Not knowing this, I've heard different figures: 5,200, 5,700, and 34,900.
Well, yeah, there's basically two to do as inexpensively as possible with just random source material that we can find. Like I said, that's a total out around $5,200 to do it to where it's somewhat it's basically engineered, prepared for this potential development, or if there's anything else that was slated to be brought there in the somewhat near future. There's where your roughly 34.9 comes in. And there's a lot of stuff that's hinging on this. That's why we were trying to get ahead of it before.
So if we chose the first one, and then say even if the splash pad, it wasn't feasible for that to be there, and the town wanted something else to be there at some point, then they have to redo the
No, what would happen is if the feasibility come back as, well, I want to say as a negative on that being a primary location, and the town wanted to go ahead and complete that as an grassed area, what we would do would be basically go in and we would pull off about 12 inches of the top, 12 inches of that crusher run, and then the town forces can bring in the minimal amount of like under soil that we would need, and then the topsoil to go on top of that. It's probably pretty reasonable that we could tackle something like that, or we could see how much it would cost to have it done. But that's what we would do in the long run if this turned out to not be the selected site. As again, we don't have to remove the whole. We don't have to remove any all of it. We would just go strip off the top 12 inches of it and bring in some material enough to get the vegetation to grow. The site would still be viable in the future. So underneath that 12 inches, we would still have compacted subbase. So in the future, if another building were to go there, well, it acts very similar to other construction projects. You go in, you scrape off the topsoil, and then you can start digging footers. So the site underneath this 12 inches of soil would still be usable for a construction project, be it another bathroom house or some other facility. We wouldn't. It's not like we have to pull every bit of it out. We can leave it in the ground and just pull off enough, and then basically salvage that material would go back into our stockpiles that the town would use for our own purposes, either sidewalk repair, because that's what we use to put on a sidewalk. We can use it for a myriad of things, and we would just salvage it and then bring in some material on top of it.
I'll put you on the spot. Which one would you recommend?
I would suggest if the likelihood that this site will remain a primary location for this potential project, I'd go with the second. I mean, it's very possible. The back pedal, if it doesn't get picked on this, is again minimal amount of work. We don't have to remove it all. If we put the minimal amount of work into it now and it comes back that this is an adequate site, but the soil we used didn't have a proctor and we just kind of got it from where we could to get it as cheap as possible, and we have to remove it all, the contractor is going to charge us probably the $7,900 again to remove it, and then the 34-ish, or whatever the materials cost. I think if in the future, if it looks like this is going to be the selected site, this will be the option to go. But again, if it turned out to not to be, then the work the town has in it to get it back to a grass field is a lot less than $7,900. That makes sense.
In my opinion, I think it would be wise to go with option 2. It's 34,900. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. Approximately the only
having to go and backpedal and redo something and then spend 40,000. So or over 40,000. So in my opinion, I like option 2, and it's safe too. So.
Other than that, or just to leave the site as it is until the feasibility study is done, and make a determination at that point in time, just leave it fenced off. But it's necessarily not an option I thought would best suit the park to have it looking like that, right, basically.
Even though it's roped off, it still can be dangerous.
Sure. I mean, there's people in it. I mean, it's secure in the sense that it keeps out the honest people. I mean, there's people in it all the time. I mean, Brad's dad ran off some guy was picking up bricks in there. So again, people just slip in. I mean, it's going to keep out the people that want to stay out of it. So, but anybody could get into it.
Any other questions?
Thank y'all.
Thank you. I appreciate you. So consideration by town council to approve one of these 2 fillers to be used at the Withers Park bleachers. So I will need a motion as to what Guess if you want to do it number 1 or number 2, whatever. We need a motion.
I make a motion for option number 2. We don't have to backtrack and redo something.
So I have a motion. Do I have a second? I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All right, hearing none. I need a roll call vote. Mr. Gilman?
Gilman, aye.
Patterson, no.
Stanton, aye.
Johnson, aye.
Guys have that. Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Next on the agenda is to consider a reappointment by Mr. Bobby Angles to the Wytheville Recreation Commission. His term expires December 31, 2024. Does Ms. Corbin have any input on that?
No, ma'am, that's it. He just needs to be reappointed if the council so desires.
Do I have a motion? Motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and second. Is there any further discussion? And hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Well, any opposed? He's re-elected. Next is consideration by town council to schedule a meet and greet session or to reappoint Mr. Bobby Angles to the Wytheville Recreation Commission. All right, next is to consider scheduling a meet and greet session or appointing a member to the Wytheville Recreation Commission to fill the expiring term of Ms. Glenda Salerno. Term expires December 31, 2024. I will need a motion from council. I think we either appoint one of the appointees, or we do a meet and greet on this two that is this is four. So we have 4 candidates for that particular seat.
I don't know all of these.
I agree, Ms. Atkins, 'cause there's a couple of them I don't know either.
So yes, it is feasible. I think, Sherry, you need to explain to them how that's going to have to happen, because there's 4 of them.
Yes, ma'am. There's 4 of them. And then also down, the next agenda item is for a youth member. So if you want to do a meet and greet with all of these, you'll need to schedule a work session at 3:45 to give each of them at least 15 minutes.
At 3:45.
Yes. Yeah, 3:45 p.m.
Thank you. I'm just being me.
So would everybody be able to, in that time frame is what Gordon's getting at.
It would be on Monday, December 9th at 3:45, if they all can attend. You may have some of these that can't attend until, it could run over to you January, your first meeting in January, which will be January 13th. But we'll try to set them all up if they're able to attend. Yes, ma'am. You could come in later. And I could confirm the time based on the number of people, the applicants that can come. Yes, ma'am.
So that seems to be what council wishes. Need to vote on that for you.
I can do a consensus.
Several of them, this includes that one as well. Correct.
Yes, it'll be this one. They want to do that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so we need to know if we want the youth person to be interviewed at the same time, or do we want the youth person to come in and do the interview? Previously, we've done it both ways.
We can do it at the same time if they're available.
I'm not too sure what time high schools get out. Ollie, can you give them a ride over, whoever they are? Just go to whatever school they're at.
I mean, it's just one person for the youth, right?
Yes, ma'am.
I don't think, I mean,
We don't have to.
for the youth person, it's just one person. I don't think we need them.
You could appoint them tonight if you'd like. If you're not going to hold a meet and greet, you could appoint the youth member tonight.
Well, I would like to make a motion to appoint the youth member tonight.
So we have a motion. Consider scheduling a meet and greet, which we're going to do a session to appoint the youth member of the Wytheville Recreation Commission to fill the expired term, Mrs. Jessica Cohen, term expired August 1, 2024. So we have a motion to
appoint, is it Audrey Angles?
Yes.
Audrey Angles to that term.
Elizabeth, is it Angle?
we have a motion. Do we have a second? Motion and a second. Any further discussion? I hear none. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Is there any opposed? Congratulations. Next on the agenda is to consider appointing two members to the Wytheville Redevelopment and Housing Authority to fill the following positions. One, an unexpired term of Mr. Christopher Fox, which term expires September 8, 2028, and an unexpired term of Ms. Gay Hawkins, term expires September 8, 2027. We have a motion.
On this one, Mayor Taylor, the council had voted some time ago not to hold meet and greet sessions with the appointees to the Wytheville Redevelopment and Housing Authority, so we won't have to schedule a meet and greet for them. You can just make the appointments if the council so desires.
So then I would like to make a motion that we appoint Elizabeth K. Graceclose and Dennis G. Barker to the Wytheville Redevelopment and Housing Authority.
We have a motion.
Which one? The terms.
Yes, it's Ms. Graceful's going to deal Mr. Fox.
The terms end at different times, so we need to identify which term. for each.
Gotcha.
You'll see.
So, Mr. Barker, whose term would end in September the 8th, 2028. And then Ms. Graceclose, September the 8th, 2027.
So I have a motion. Do I have a second? Motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? I hear none. All in favor signify by saying aye. Well, any opposed? That motion carries. I think that gets all of those. All right. Next on the agenda is citizens period, and we do not have anybody signed in to speak this evening. So we will move forward, and we'll ask Ms. Corbin about any upcoming meetings.
Yes, ma'am. I have just a few. The town municipal offices will be closed and all services curtailed beginning Wednesday, November 27th through Friday, November 29th due to the Thanksgiving holiday. Joint Industrial Development Authority of Wythe County will meet on Tuesday, December the 3rd at 3 p.m. here in the council chambers. And the last one is the next regular scheduled meeting of the Wytheville Town Council will be held on Monday, December 9th at 5 p.m. here in the council chambers. And that's all.
Questions for? All right, next on the agenda is an update on the 20th Street Bridge by Assistant Town Manager, Ms. Holton.
Okay, so this evening I would like to provide a quick update on the 20th Street Bridge. And I am pleased to report that the construction bid phase of the 20th Street Bridge repair project is currently underway. Bids are being prepared, we hope, as we are here tonight, and the bids will be due on December the 6th. So shortly after that time, we hope to report back to Town Council about which contractor may have gotten the bid to do both, we hope, the railroad portion and the town's portion of the work. Myself, Mr. Anderson, and Mr. Austin attended the November 19th pre-bid meeting, which was held at the 20th Street Bridge. There was some interest from contractors, so we are very hopeful that we will get a good price for the town's portion of the work. Essentially, the railroad has set a project completion date of May 1st for the project. We hope that will be done sooner, but that should be sort of the worst case scenario. There are, I believe they said 20 trains that use those tracks in a 24-hour period. So obviously that will be a constraint that whatever contractor who is doing the work will have to navigate with the scheduling of working as they schedule the trains through there. And in closing, the town would like to just say to the citizens of the town that we appreciate your patience with us as we have navigated this challenge. If you have any questions, we are happy to answer them. Yes, ma'am.
We are very lucky to be able to do that, and thanks to the work of management to look back and find those agreements. So that was awesome.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you for the time and the effort that you all have put in to get this process rolling and taken care of swiftly and quickly. So thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Lane, you might just want to stay there. Next on the agenda is discussion regarding community flood preparedness grant, and there's a resiliency plan.
Okay. So essentially, I prepared this PowerPoint, and then after I did that, I realized I had a lot of slides in here. So I'm going to go through here pretty quickly. The purpose for tonight is to make the council and the citizens aware of the DCR Community Flood Preparedness Fund. This is a source of funding that I think could bring a lot of benefit to the town of Wytheville. The second purpose is to share information on the town of Wytheville resiliency plan, and the resiliency plan would be a requirement for us to apply for the grant. And lastly, we're going to propose 2 potential grant projects that we can talk about for this fund. So let's talk about the potential projects. Essentially, we are all aware of some stormwater issues throughout the town. Town engineering planning staff and myself discussed the idea of a watershed stormwater study. Although we know about selected areas across town, we thought this would be a really neat way to try to categorize our top 10 worst stormwater locations. We would also list potential strategies to address those problem areas, identify project costs and potential funding sources, identify land use and development best practices so that we do not increase stormwater issues. And also, at the end, we thought an appendix of those that didn't make the top 10 list, but that could be selected for future studies might be important. The second project, many of us have been talking about this for several years now, is to look at the property that the town owns next to the hospital as a potential stormwater detention pond. And what this could do for the town is to slow the velocity and the volume of stormwater when we have high precipitation events so that it would drain more slowly through the rest of the town branch watershed. So those are the 2 projects that we are looking at now. These would be sort of in the project study category. And so if you go to the next slide. Here is a map that John Woods has been working on for the town. And essentially what it shows is your FEMA regulated floodplains, in addition to where we have identified some stormwater issues throughout town. The green is those areas that we tend to see repeated flooding over the years. And so a picture says 1,000 words, right? So this is some stormwater flooding that we typically see approximately every 1 to 2 years there between Grayson National Bank and Withers Park. And unfortunately, we do have some significant stormwaters that will impact some of our downtown businesses. And so this would also potentially be a high-ranking priority area for us to evaluate as part of this study. So in looking at the grant, this is round 5. We're unsure if they're going to have future rounds, so we would very much like to apply for this round if we can put an application together. And so again, the DCR office wants localities to do what's called a resiliency plan, and this is the definition of resilience. It's the capacity to anticipate, prepare for, respond to, and recover from significant multi-hazard threats with minimum damage to social well-being, health, the economy, and the environment. These are the guiding principles. So essentially, as part of our project, we would base our decisions on the best available science. We would address socioeconomic inequalities. We would utilize community and regional scale planning to the maximum extent, tailored to individual communities, understand fiscal realities and cost effectiveness. They do like to see these projects prioritize nature-based solutions. And lastly, recognize the importance of protecting natural systems, coastal barriers, fish and wildlife habitat. So getting back to the program, the fund was established for regions and localities across Virginia, and we did attend a How to Apply webinar. The folks from DCR actually traveled down to Southwest Virginia to meet with not only the town of Wytheville, but Wythe County and Carroll County to encourage us to apply for this. They don't typically see as many applications in the southwestern part of the state, so I do feel like we would have a pretty good chance of acquiring the funds if we were to apply. Okay, yeah, you can keep going, Ron. So you just keep on going, Ron. All right, so here's the schedule. In September, the round opened. January 24th is when the grant would be due. They would have a review period, and then the announcements would be made in March 2025. The good thing about this timetable is that aligns with our typical budget process and our CIP. So if we would not have to allocate any matches at this time, we could wait and see if we were to get the grant before we would allocate the match funds for our portion of the work. Getting back to the categories, at this time, I would recommend that we just go for the grants, but in future years, I just wanted to also make the town council aware that they do have loan programs as well. So once we get through the study phase, if we do decide we want to actually do a construction project, we can consider loans at some point in the future if the fund remains viable. Okay, so next slide. So essentially, if we were to get the grant, we would have 3 years. We can apply for more than one application, and our hope is to submit at least 2. I'm trying to think what else here is good from this slide. You can match revolving loan funds at some point in the future if we do decide to do loan funds with grant funds. Okay, next slide. All right, so again, capacity building and planning is really where we are at with the 2 projects that we are recommending. We have gotten some interest from some of our engineering firms that are on term contract who I think may be partners with us in writing the grants. That's great news. And then they could potentially help us do the study as well. All right, next slide. This is the exciting thing about this grant fund is that because we are considered a low-income geographic area, the grant would be 90%, and we would only have to come up with 10%. So that's very exciting for us. And again, the categories include studies. Next slide, Ron. Again, the 90% match. And then you have actual flood prevention and protection projects. We could do things such as relocation of structures, preservation of open space. Obviously, we don't have any dams in town, but we could do flood control structures such as the detention pond that I mentioned earlier. All right. Getting back to the need for the resilience plan, staff is starting to work on the resilience plan. We do have to have that complete before we apply for the grant. So potentially at your meeting in December, you will see a staff report on a draft resiliency plan. The good news is our resiliency plan could be relatively short, so we're sort of aiming for 10 to 15 pages for our first draft resiliency plan for the town of Wytheville. Should the town council decide to approve the resiliency plan, it is something that we can build on in future years. So it's not like just one and done. It's something that we can use as a starting point and continue to improve. Again, should we decide to actually implement the measures that we identify in the study, these would be your matches for actual construction projects. And again, those matches are very lucrative for the town of Wytheville because, again, we are a low-income community. All right, next slide. And if you look at if you go to the DCR website, you will notice you can look at some of the projects that were previously funded. And it's pretty excited to look through those projects because many communities across Virginia have been able to solve flooding and stormwater issues by use of the fund. Okay, Ron, let's see what we got here. I think I put too many slides in here, but we talked about resilience plans. Okay, keep going, Ron. The 9 critical elements in the resilience plan. These will be some of the categories that we will cover. So when you see our resilience plan, these are the 9 elements that will be covered in that plan. The relationship of your resiliency plan will be to your hazard mitigation plan. I don't know if you remember at a previous meeting, we did talk about the Mount Rogers hazard mitigation plan. So we will most likely reference many elements from that plan. Obviously, the town of Wytheville has a 2013 comprehensive plan that we will reference. And luckily, our planning and our engineering department have been building a database of some of the stormwater concerns across town that we will also reference. And lastly, this is an example from another small town in Virginia, and you can see that their resiliency plan was only 10 pages. So I feel confident we can put that together. Okay, so next steps. At your December 9th meeting, we will be bringing your resiliency plan, or draft resiliency plan for your consideration. At the January 13th meeting, staff will provide you with an update on the grant application, and the grant application is due on January the 24th. So at this time, I'm here to answer any questions that you might have.
I think it's great. I think it's a good opportunity for the town.
Absolutely. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good job.
All right, next on the agenda is presentation of information regarding the elected officials conference schedule for January 8, 2025, and the local government day conference schedule. Ms. Corbin.
Yes, Mayor Taylor. In your package, you have information about the 2 upcoming trainings that's on the agenda. The first one is elected officials conference scheduled to be held in Glen Allen, Virginia on January the 8th. And the second one is the local government day conference scheduled in Richmond on Thursday, January 30th. So if any council member would like to attend, if you could let me know as soon as possible so we could register you and make the appropriate hotel reservations or whatever.
Any questions for Ms. Corbin? All right, so when we advance now to council member time. Gilman,
I have nothing at this time.
Vice Mayor.
Nothing at this time.
I have a couple of little things, but I'll be glad to go at the end. So, Ms. Atkins.
I just want to thank the HR department and everyone who had a part in getting the banquet together employees. Heard a lot of great feedback. Really enjoyed it.
Ms. Johnson.
I do not have anything at this time. The staff did an excellent job for the banquet, the employee appreciation banquet, and I'm glad we were able to recognize them. Everything turned out nice.
Thank you, very nice. And I have two little items. With the opening of the Burger Haven, I think that's its name today, I was approached by the property owner, not the owner of the business, to ask the town to consider doing a 15-minute pickup parking spot right beside the handicap spot. So I told him I'd bring that to management and let them look at that. And you understand what they're asking? Yeah. Yeah. So.
I think there is like a 30-minute parking maybe on the side, would probably better on the side. I think there's like 30-minute parking there, I could be wrong.
And that, yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Maybe that might be, we have the.
And then my other, some people had approached me about the bump outs that we have are hard to see sometimes in the evening time, especially if you're coming around on the corner. So I do have these at the pleasure of John, and he actually is in the room today. So this is an option. Do you want to come up and talk about that, seeing as you're here?
Yes, the picture that you have provided tonight is an example of the type of signage that is recommended by the Federal Highway Administration to call out objects that might be a hazard in the road. And this is the standard for that type of use. I pulled that picture off of a supplier's website. As you can see, they're not particularly expensive, and they're configured so that the lines point downward to the side that you're supposed to drive on. You'll see them on roads pretty much everywhere. There's a few in town. Any questions specifically that I can answer?
Question on about this. I know I spoke to Mr. Freeman about instead of putting grass there, it might would be have been a good idea to put down some rocks. So it was like washing away instead of having our employees go and do those so often. I just think it would be beneficial if there would be some rocks in there to save people from getting their cars dinged or whatever. If somebody's leaving, I just hate to put that much on
If the idea is to fill the space with something that's doesn't have to be mowed or maintained as well, like plants, wood, or ground covers, I'd probably recommend putting a concrete base in there, possibly something that's textured, like similar to the stamped concrete that was installed along Main Street, say in front of the log house and down in the lower block between 7th and 5th Street. That's more typical for what you would use. The heavy texture to discourage pedestrian traffic out there and to keep the pedestrians guided along the sidewalk. As far as the erosion of the grass, the real issue with that is that those storms hit before that grass was able to establish.
I was saying so we wouldn't have employees going and cutting it so often.
Right.
And they'd have to look back at vehicles to see, whether or not, weed or gravel. I just didn't know if that's something.
Yeah.
Ran it by Mr. Freeman.
And that's true.
Maybe consider doing something else with just that grass and having a boy have to stop, and take their time to know that, possibly, gravel or something, or just didn't know maybe doing that.
You had mentioned concern that the storms had washed out the grass, and that is a problem now because it's just been installed and the roots of the grass haven't established. In the future, that wouldn't be an issue. But you are correct that
Actually brought it up before, that, grass looks nice, but I just think it would take a lot of time to manage the possibility of gravel, somebody's leaving, cars go by or something, break the window.
that's certainly.
I don't guess my mic's on. Sorry.
So, Miss Atkins, how do you feel about the stamped concrete
I
approach?
think that would be great. I mean, versus, big boulder rocks. I think that's a good idea.
Okay.
Like I said, I did mention it before the grass was actually sown, but
Yeah,
I just think
using the river stone that in an area along a public street, it's going to tend to get knocked out into the street and would probably be more of an issue than the mowing as far as safety for the cars around. So
the stamped concrete's a great idea.
Okay.
So if the rest of the council is in agreement with the stamped concrete idea, staff would be happy to put the delineators and the stamped concrete in those areas.
I think that's a good idea, and I think we're going to see more of these things in the future. So,
yeah, it should be noted that those bump outs are the first phase. The plan is that similar bump outs would be installed at the 5th Street intersection, and that another bump out would be installed just this side of 11th Street as the cars come out of that intersection, and it'll act as what's known as a chicane to direct cars into the center. And when those 3 locations are done, you'll see a more significant impact as far as slowing traffic. I do think, and have talked to the residents that live on the corner, and they do think that traffic has slowed since those were installed, which was the goal. But when the remainder of the project is completed, probably in a year or 2, it will have a bigger impact as far as the traffic calming goals that we set.
Now,
As
the
you
other
know,
2, will you bring back to council, the other ones you were talking about, and we get to view those?
well, those were presented a while back when we talked about this project. And this project has been funded through the Virginia Highway Safety Improvement Program, and that is a fully funded project. But due to the urgency of the problem that those neighbors, we were asked as staff to make sure that at least that one intersection happens sooner rather than waiting for the VDOT process to go through. And so those other improvements, you've seen them, and the finished plans will be coming forth over the next year or so.
Thank you.
any other questions? Thank you, sir. That is it at the end of our agenda. So council now feels the need to go into a closed meeting pursuant to 2.2-3711A1, discussion regarding the appointment of an interim town manager, pursuant to 2.2-3711A3, discussion regarding the possibility acquisition of a right-of-way in the College Park subdivision, and pursuant to 2.2-3711A7, consultation with legal counsel regarding litigation, And pursuant to 2.23711A, 8, consultation with legal counsel regarding the possibility of negation of a property lease. I need a motion.
So moved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and second. Is there any discussion?
Yes. I would like to invite newly elected official, Mr. Joseph Hand, into our closed session. By law, we are allowed to do that, I believe. Is that correct? Am I correct?
Yes, the body, the council may choose to invite someone in. I would recommend the ones regarding consultation with legal counsel that he not be in those because he would waive attorney-client privilege on those because he's not yet a member of council. But on the other ones, yes, but it requires action of the body to invite him in. You can do that by motion. Also, I guess before we convene into closed session, do a second motion to allow that in. Okay. So, but you've got your motion right now to go into closed session. Then before you convene to closed session, Madam Mayor, you can consider Ms. Johnson's motion if she wants to make.
So we have a motion to go into closed session. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye as well. So we will convene. Now, do you want to put forth your
To
motion?
include newly elected official, Mr. Joseph Hand Jr.
All right, so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and second. Is there any further discussion? All right, here none. This does not need to be a roll call vote. For all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
As well, any opposed? Here none. That motion passes.
We take a quick break.
Yes, you may have a quick break. Council now feels it necessary to go back out into open session. Council member votes that the matters were discussed in the closed session does not affect the validity or confidentiality of the lawfully discussed matters in closed session. So I will need a motion to come out of closed session.
So moved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? Hearing none, this will be a roll call vote, please, and we'll start with Candace.
Johnson, aye.
Atkins, aye.
Taylor, aye.
Patterson, aye.
Gilman, aye.
All right. If there's no other,
And that was a certification that only those business matters lawfully exempt from open meeting requirements were discussed. And only those matters that were identified in the motion to go into executive session were discussed. Is everyone good with that?
Yes.
yes.
I do have something I'd like to say. Great meeting. Thanks, everybody.
Wait a
It seems
minute.
like a great meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, we are now
Yeah, let's go.
adjourned.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Oh.
Thank you.